Hi everyone, I'm Gretchen Bailey with Optometry Times, and I am joined today by Dr. Carol Alexander from Johnson & Johnson Vision. Carol, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
It's my pleasure, Gretchen. Wonderful to see you.
Likewise. Now I know that J&J has some initiatives in myopia management, and that has become a really popular topic over the last few years, given the incidence of myopia that is increasing worldwide, and especially its effects on kids. So what's happening at J&J?
You know, it's an interesting thing that we talk about the epidemic during a pandemic, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But again, just sort of reminding ourselves what we mean by epidemic is that there's a disease state out there that is, extremely prevalent and widespread. And I think what we're finding worldwide is that when we talk about myopia, it's really tied to a greater health risk than simply the need to have to wear corrective lenses. And that's what's inspiring the interest, I think, in what this means worldwide.
I think that's a really important point because that ties into other ocular health things going on. And you're right, it's not just, gee, I need lenses, or I even have a very high prescription. There are other things that are going on. And especially with kids, with development of their visual system and then their overall physical development, that there can be implications there as well, but we can do something about it.
And, isn't that really what it's all about? When we identify a problem earlier in life, the more apt we are to make an intervention that makes a difference for the long-term aspect of one's life. And so as we think about children today, as we think about how all of us are working more in a near environment, whether we're working, playing, learning,
Right.
all of that is happening sort of inside 2 feet anymore.
Right.
And so when we think about the risk of myopia in terms of ocular health, the development of retinal holes, tears, detachments, glaucoma, but really risky things over the lifetime.
Right.
If we can identify a child earlier in the earliest stages of myopia development and think about the opportunity for better treatments than simply wearing glasses like we do today, or glasses or contacts, then maybe we have an opportunity to change the quality of life for a child in their adulthood, which is always something I think a little difficult for all of us to think about, right? It's not unlike thinking about, yes, sunburn will damage my skin today, it only hurts for a couple of days, but it's really the long-term effect that has the greater impact on your overall health.
Actually, that's a really good analogy, talking about sunburn for the challenge that you have short term, which it's annoying, it's a little uncomfortable, it might even hurt if you're really burned, but over the length of your life, the more sunburn or high UV that you get, you're going to have bigger problems down the road. And it's very hard to look that far down the road and consider long-term ramifications as opposed to what's happening short-term. Do you think that optometrists are coming up against that with parents talking to parents about their children with myopia management, or do you think that parents immediately see the benefit of this?
I think all of us have to change the way we think about myopia. Oftentimes, think about the vernacular that's used with patients. Nearsightedness doesn't sound like a big deal. Okay, so I'm nearsighted, I'm farsighted, whatever. I need corrective lenses. Now, for some people that might be, really painful because they don't want to wear glasses, but it's about an eye correction. And we really want to start making ourselves or forcing ourselves to think about myopia as the disease state that it is that requires treatment. And that's going to take all of us thinking about things differently. So as we classify, myopia as the disease that it is, because it has risk that goes along with it beyond just the obvious of needing a corrective lens, that conversation requires us to come up with, what are the potential guidelines where we talk about that? How do we think about that differently collectively, so it isn't, frankly, just the doctors doing the heavy lifting on trying to make sure that a parent understands that risk, particularly if the parent is not nearsighted.
Right. I think that's a good point, that if a parent is very highly myopic, that parent will immediately see the benefit, but for someone who isn't, maybe not. And that's a good tie-in to talk about the Global Myopia Awareness Coalition, or GMAC. Can you tell me a little bit about that and about the study that came out?
Well, so the GMAC, as you said, Global Myopia Awareness Coalition, of which we are one of the members, is really a group that is thinking about the prevalence of myopia across the globe, and then connecting with online gamers and parents to raise awareness about myopia. So again, taking the burden of the conversation off the doctors solely. And
Right.
so I think, especially as we think about the fact that, 67% of parents are indicating that their children are using, gaming devices as well as computers for learning now, more than they ever had before. It's a really important thing. So how can we ultimately connect with all of everyone out there to say, how do we take breaks from this? How do we encourage our children to do things outside instead of inside? Because it's going to take some cognitive thought, because of how our society and culture has moved to having a little computer right in the palm of your hand every day, all day long. And
Right.
so it will take, I think, a big effort globally to make sure that we're having the right kinds of conversations to encourage the right kind of activities that don't say, a smartphone is a bad thing, or a tablet is a bad thing, or gaming is a bad thing. But how do we get people to work collectively to minimize that risk to the child by encouraging looking away from that computer, the 20-20-20 rule, or simply taking some time to go outside?
Looking at some of the data from this poll, this said that during this pandemic, and we've all been locked down, 61% of parents said their child's use of video games has increased, which frankly, I'm kind of surprised that it's that low, given the challenges that everyone has had with working from home, having kids at home. It's been a challenge for people in many, many ways. And I'm wondering if we're going to see some changes in myopic kids having a slightly stronger prescription. As you say, we're also using these devices for doing more work, more schoolwork than we ever did before. So 61%, I thought it would be higher.
I'm with you on that. I would have thought so too, like somewhere up near 90-95%
Right.
would say that. But the details are what the details are, and it was in the 60s range. But even that is such a high percentage,
Right.
kids that are using devices more. And maybe we should take the silver lining there and say some parents are pretty good at helping their children balance, what they do, and maybe they, already try to limit some of that screen time, which is, perhaps wasn't intended as eye relief as much as it was a parental decision to do things
Right.
differently.
Absolutely.
But, good for them.
Well, another stat here is saying that 44% of surveyed parents say their children are spending 4 or more hours per day on devices. And that's a long time. If you add in, I mean, that's everything, but schoolwork, I think, is really adding onto that. And then, of course, with kids being home more, and if you get your schoolwork out of the way, well, then you're going to play some Minecraft or some Fortnite. And so 4 or more hours a day, that's a lot.
I think about my own grandchild in that case, and he's a lover of games. And so, like, having to do Zoom for school and now Zoom for his violin lessons, that's taken away from the game. Oh, no, it's not. The gaming is still happening.
Right.
So, how do we find that right balance that allows us to both enjoy what the technology offers us,
Right.
but doesn't inadvertently harm us in the long run? And so Johnson & Johnson Vision is pleased to be part of any initiative that really is looking at the long-term effect of myopia and trying to come to terms not only with it and the definition of it, but what will we ultimately do to be able to change the trajectory for children and people worldwide.
Right, totally agree. And I'm really glad to see the gaming community embracing this too, because instead of looking at it as a negative, that, oh my God, this is horrible for you, you're going to make your eyes worse, you know, that's what some people were saying. This is our world today. This is where we are, and people do use devices for fun things to do, as well as school, as well as work. I mean, that's the world we're living in. So let's be real and address it and see what we can do. So I'm really glad to see that the gaming community is embracing such a collaboration here. That's really great news.
Yeah, I mean, because it's all about balance in the end.
Right.
And none of us want to have the added burden of healthcare costs, number one, but more importantly, as we talked about in the beginning, the risk of making, you know, a situation really affect the quality of life of a person in adulthood, because we weren't paying attention when they were kids. So I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I think a lot of great minds, and to your point earlier, the collaboration of a variety of people working on it, I think is what's valued and important to the profession.
Totally agree. Well, Carol, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it. And it is good to see you, even if it's on a Zoom.
Thanks, you too, and have a wonderful rest of your day. I love the bird in the background.
Oh, you can hear the bird. Yes, it's somebody flying around here looking for something. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, you have a good one.